to the Mercedes-Benz AMG C43 Coupe. I know that's a long name. So, what is this entry-level AMG car like? Well, firstly, I was at home a couple of days ago thinking about the BMW M2, as you do, and I was thinking to myself, what competition has that car got at just under 50 grand? Now, sure, there's a new RS3 and there's various other really nice fast hot hatches, but when it comes to sport coupes with a 6-spot under the bonnet, there's not really much out there. And then I remembered about the C43. Now, it's an interesting car, this one, because it shares a lot of stats with the M2. Very similar size, both got 3-litre turbocharged 6-cylinder engines, both producing about 370 horsepower, both doing 0 to 60 in just over 4.5 seconds. M2 might be around 4.5 flat, but very similar. Both limited top speeds of 155 mph, both in this case black, and in my old M2 were both available in black. But yeah, so it got me thinking, you know, how close is this car to the M2? Now, the fundamental difference between the two, aside from the badge and the bonnet, is the fact that this is an all-wheel drive car, or 4Matic as Mercedes like to call it, and the M2 is obviously rear-wheel drive. So you would think that this would not be as fun or playful as the M2. We all know Mercedes makes some fantastic interiors, and this is no exception. It's really nice in here, especially when you initially get in. It's just so modern and not futuristic, it's just really clean and nice in here. And Mercedes are very strong with their interior game at the moment. Once you start prodding around and looking at some of the plastics, especially like the center console and some of the buttons, they're not actually as nice to feel and touch as they look. So a lot of the premium part of the cabin is actually aesthetics more than the actual materials they use, whereas I would say the opposite is true for BMW. You get in, say, the new G35 series, and okay, it looks more modern than a lot of other BMWs, but when you start prodding around in that, you realise that the quality of the materials are very high, but the interior doesn't shout high quality. It's almost a bit dull, the BMW, whereas this, you get in here and it's really nice. It really does look really modern. Just, yeah, it lifts the interior up, feels good in here, feels really good. The seats as well, the seats look so much more special than the ones that you get in the M2. They're not, once you're sat in them, they're actually no more supportive, and they're probably not as comfortable. They're a bit on the small size for me. I'm 6'3" and I seem to sort of sit, I just don't seem to fit in them properly. I don't have enough support around the top of my or around my shoulders, or even the top of my torso. I can imagine they'll be perfect for someone around 5'10", but they look the part. They certainly look a lot more special than the ones in the M2. Now, the seating position in this, and like in many Mercedes, is not as good as a BMW, and that's not me being a BMW fan, man. Honestly, you sit too high. I can't get the seat low enough, and as a result, I can't get the steering has to sit a bit higher. The reach adjustment on the steering column isn't as good as it is in the majority of BMWs, but it's not a bad seating position. It's just, again, for someone of my size and height, half my vision is looking at the sun visor here, which isn't ideal, but then I'm used to that in many cars. Now, let's talk a bit about the engine. So yeah, we got 370 brake horsepower out of a turbocharged 3-litre 6-cylinder. 6-cylinder, that's the key word here, because it sounds really good. Now, this has got a very trick AMG exhaust on it, and it completely transforms what would normally be a fairly dull sounding 6. Now, I don't think a lot of the Merc 6s sound quite as smooth or raspy as the BMW equivalent, but with this exhaust on, wow, I mean, wow. The upshifts are just, you get snaps, crackles, pops, bangs, it's lovely. Now we've got a 9-speed G-tronic, I think they call it, gearbox, I haven't got it out of 4th on any of the roads that I've been driving around. And so, do you need the 9-speed? Probably not, but I can imagine that that helps them with the economy, especially on the diesel models, etc. Because once you step up to the C43 and the other bigger AMGs, they all come with the 7-speed gearbox, which to me, 7-speed is enough. Okay, the ZF 8-speed is great, but 9-speed, is that just so that they can trump everyone else? I don't know, but it's probably got a lot to do with the eco. What was that? It was like a little rodent that ran across the road. So now, what's it like handling wise? What's it like compared to the BMW M2? Well, I can tell you straight away, the ride in it is much better, especially when you're in comfort. It just settles down and feels like a really, really nice, comfortable GT car. So it's got that ability. Now, when you put it into Sport Plus and you stiffen everything up and you turn the exhaust on, it does turn into a sports car. Now, my main concern so far is that even though I've got all-wheel drive traction in this car, the traction control seems to cut in so easily. Now, it's been raining out, the roads are still pretty dry, but you know, I wouldn't say they're the grippiest. I've got Dunlop Sport Max tyres on it, I think, which I'm not very familiar with. They seem to do the job, but the traction control is so intrusive, like really majorly intrusive, even in Sport Plus. Like, it literally reels back all the power. It's unbelievable, and I can't believe that AMG actually tuned that traction control, because to me it doesn't feel very sophisticated at all. It feels very intrusive and very frustrating. So the first thing I want to do in this car is turn everything off. Now, I probably wouldn't do that in a rear wheel drive car within the first 10 minutes of a drive, but in this one, as I say, it's all wheel drive. So yeah, let's turn it off and see if that intrusiveness disappears. Steering lock, and it's not too bad, but I can imagine it's probably worse than the non-AMG car. Right, so let's where's the button down here? Let's just sport handling mode, traction off. So let's just see. 1 minute it's raining and dark, next minute it's sunshine and still raining. So yeah, the one thing for sure, the sound. I mean, those upshifts, bang, listen, bang. Gearbox is fast. I wouldn't say it's any quicker than ZF 8-speed. Definitely no quicker than a ZF 8-speed. But it does a great job, really good job. Yes, I'm not being supported in these seats at all. I'm moving around a bit. I've got an Audi right up my arse. I don't want to go too fast because I'm not going to break any speed limits. But yeah, it's pretty good. It's a pretty impressive car, pretty impressive drive. Now, it's nowhere near as focused as an M2. This is like the comfortable equivalent, if you like. This is probably the much better all-rounder. Let's just... Oh yeah, much better. The minute you've turned everything off, it goes, it absolutely flies. And when it needs power, it just feeds it to the relevant wheel. So yeah, don't rely on the really over-intrusive traction control thing and device in this car. Just turn everything off and it turns into a much better car, much better. Because before, literally, I was coming up here in Sport Plus, and it was, the traction control light was flashing and it just wasn't giving me any power. I could feel it holding the power back. Even though it's tracking well over the road, it's not getting bounced about. Like if I was in the M2, in fact, I took my M2 down this very patch of road a number of times, and I used to get thrown around and it was getting airborne and all sorts. So what's it like, Louise, in the back? Good? Yeah. Comfortable ride, isn't it? It's really like, it's just like my 7 Series. This is basically how I chauffeur people.
It's not like the Rolls-Royce Phantom you had.
No. Power delivery in the engine's really good. It seems to lack low down torque, and that might be a matter of the car weighing. I would think it weighs a couple of 100 kilos more than the M2, so in effect it feels like the motor's got less torque and less power. But certainly all the power on this thing is right at the top end. But it's really nice. It is, I wouldn't say it's Jekyll and Hyde, because it definitely isn't. It doesn't have that crazy sort of M2 top end about it, but it definitely has a much better everyday feel about it. When I had my M2, you just wanted to press a button. It just turned everything off and just chilled out and gave me a nice softer ride. But because the ride wasn't adjustable in that, you always got the firm ride. The exhaust, I know a lot of people have gone for the M Performance exhaust and stuff, and it makes a great sound, but you can never turn that exhaust off really in the M2. Whereas in this car, you know, I put it down into comfort now, it goes completely quiet, and it just feels great. Feels very comfortable, very chilled. Suddenly I'm not feeling like, again, in some loud noisy sports cars, they're always egging you on to go fast, whereas in this, you put it into comfort now and it actually encourages you to just sort of sit back and relax and chill. So this is in comfort, standard mode. You would not think I was accelerating at the rate that I was, because it's so quiet. Flick it up into Sport Plus, here we go, into manual. Second. It is great. It's a very addictive sound, it really is. And it doesn't hang around. It's because the ride and the suspension is so well sorted in this car compared to, say, the M2, you don't realise how fast you're going until you actually look down and see the speedo. Now that's sometimes a good thing, sometimes a bad thing, because again, in cars that have got very stiff setups, you can have a lot of fun at slower speeds, like the Focus RS. That does bounce around a lot like the M2 and make it feel like it's going a lot faster than it is sometimes. So let's have a look. Everything off, up it. Oh, hit the limiter there. Oh yes, it's so much better with everything off. It's still no M2. It really is not that focused. It feels heavier. It feels like it sits a bit higher, but it's very close. It's very close. And when you think what you trade off for that, in terms of, you know, the brilliant ride and stuff that you get. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting car. Very interesting. Really. I think for under 50 grand, this thing is very tempting. You know, it's a great piece of kit, and it's certainly, you don't feel shortchanged in here. It feels every bit 50 grand. Now, exterior wise, it looks good. It doesn't quite look as muscly as you'd probably want it to look. I think it's a sexier shape than the 2 Series or the M2, but it's definitely not as aggressive looking as the M2, for sure. It's definitely not. I think the M2 is in line with like the C43 in terms of aggressive looks, and this lacks that C63, the big arches and just the stance that the C63's got. But this is still a fantastic looking car. I have to say, I'm really taken by this car. I think it's a great piece of kit, it really is. It's drives and handles well, makes the right sounds, lovely and comfortable in here. I'm very impressed. Very impressed. It's definitely an alternative to the M2 if you want a sort of a more rounded package. The M2 is the better outright sports car, which you'd think it would be, but if you're not after something that's just gonna fry your brains all the time, then this C43 Coupe is really something else. Let's just accelerate out of here, see if we can get some exhaust sounds. Get some shout out and thanks to Raz, or Rockin' on Instagram, or Remove Before Race on YouTube. I'm going to put a link to everything of his below because he is Mr AMG and his videos are brilliant. And I also want to say a big thanks to Hughes Mercedes of Beaconsfield, who supplied this car to Raz and said it was fine for me to have a go as well. So thank you very much, guys, I really appreciate that. This particular car is a demo, it's one of their demo cars, so if you want to go and experience what I've experienced, then head down there and ask for a proper test drive, because it's definitely worth it for sure. It's an alternative, and that is coming from what they call Mr BMW, although I'm not. I just seem to get my hands on more BMWs than any other manufacturer, and I'm open to trying all cars, you know, especially German stuff. I love German cars, and this car, case in point, has proved that although it's not as sharp as an M2, if it was, then it would just be another M2, if that makes sense. But it actually is an alternative. It really is. It's a different car. It offers different driving dynamics, and it offers, if anything, a wider package. It's a real piece of kit, this thing, and yeah, really enjoyed it. So thanks a lot, guys. Stay tuned for the next one. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this Mercedes video, and leave any comments below. Cheers.